In a significant diplomatic development, the White House has confirmed that the upcoming summit in Anchorage, Alaska, between United States President Donald Trump and his Russian counterpart will proceed as a bilateral meeting, excluding both Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. The decision to maintain a direct one-on-one format for this initial high-stake discussion has been a subject of intense speculation and concern in both Kyiv and Brussels. Administration officials have stressed that this is a preliminary fill-out meeting designed to gauge the seriousness of the Russian positions and to explore potential pathways toward a ceasefire. President Trump has personally conveyed that should this initial engagement prove fruitful, he would almost immediately seek to convene a second trilateral summit that would include President Zelenskyy. This approach, however, has not fully assuaged the anxiety of Ukrainian and European leaders, who fears that critical decisions affecting Ukraine's sovereignty could be discussed without their direct participations. Sources familiar with the planning indicates that President Trump expressed concerns that the presence of President Zelenskyy at this first meeting could derail the talks from the outset. The lead up to the Alaska summit has been characterized by a flurry of diplomatic activity aimed at aligning the positions of Washington, Kyiv, and key European allies. President Trump recently held a virtual conference with President Zelenskyy and European leaders, including German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, French President Emmanuel Macron, and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Following the call, which President Trump described as a 10, there was a concerted effort to present a united front. The European leaders, styling themselves as a coalition of the willing, issued a joint statement with Kyiv outlining their non-negotiable principles for any peace process. These principles including the necessity of a durable ceasefire before any territorial discussions, the inadmissibility of changing international borders by force, and the provision of robust and credible long-term security guarantees for Ukraine. President Zelenskyy has been adamant that while he supports President Trump's push for a ceasefire as a first step, Ukraine will not cede territory or compromise its sovereignty. He has stated that the answer to the Ukrainian territorial question is already in the Constitution of Ukraine, reinforcing his government's rejection of any land swap proposals. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has been a pivotal voice in these pre-summit consultations. While he will not be in Anchorage, his public statements have sought to frame the talks in a way that aligns with the alliance objective. After the virtual meeting with President Trump and other leaders, Rutte emphasized the unity among allies in seeking a just and lasting peace, and stated that the ball is now in Putin's court. However, Rutte has also introduced a degree of diplomatic realism that has caused some unease in Kyiv. He recently suggested that a future peace deal might have to acknowledge the de facto, factually Russian control over some Ukrainian territories, clarifying that this would be an effectual recognition and not a political de jure recognition. This subtle distinction highlights the complex and potentially painful compromise that may be on the table. Rutte has defended President Trump's engagement, rejecting criticism that the summit legitimized the Russian leader and arguing that the administration is exerting incredible pressure on Russia through other means, such as tariffs and facilitating lethal aid shipments. He views the Alaska meeting as an important test of Moscow's seriousness about ending the war. The decision to exclude President Zelenskyy from the initial meeting is a calculated risk by the Trump administration. The rationale, as explained by administration insiders, is to create a direct channel of communication with the Russian leader, free from the immediate pressure and complexity of a multi-party negotiation. The White House believes that President Trump's personal negotiating style is best suited for this type of direct principle-to-principle engagement. The stated goal is to first secure a ceasefire, which would then create the political space for the broader negotiations involving Ukraine. President Trump has publicly reassured Kyiv and its allies that he will not negotiate territorial concessions on their behalf and that his primary objective is to stop the fighting. Following his meeting, President Trump has committed to briefing President Zelenskyy first, and then the European leaders. This sequencing is intended to demonstrate respect for Ukraine's central role in determining its own future. The administration has been keen to manage expectation, with White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt describing the summit as a listening exercise for the president. Despite this reassurance, the anxiety in Kyiv are palpable. Ukrainian officials have consistently maintained that any negotiations about Ukraine's future must include Ukraine. President Zelenskyy has forcefully stated any decisions that are without Ukraine are at the same time decisions against peace. The fear is that a deal could be struck above their heads, one that prioritizes a quick end to the conflict over Ukraine's long-term security and territorial integrity. This concern is rooted in President Trump's past comments about potential land swapping to achieve peace. While the president has since nuanced his position, the memory of those statements lingers, fueling skepticism about the ultimate outcome of the bilateral talks. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has sought to bridge this gap, affirming that the Ukrainians have a right to be part of this process, and that any solution must involve a compromise between both sides, facilitated by the President Trump. The choice of Anchorage, Alaska as the venue is symbolic. It is a location geographically situated between the two powers and has historical significance dating back to the Cold War and Russia's former ownership of the territory. For the Russian side, the summit itself is a significant diplomatic victory, breaking a long period of relative isolation and placing their leader on an equal footing with the American president to discuss matters of global security. The Kremlin has sought to portray the meeting as a consultation between two great powers on a range of issues, with Ukraine being just one part of a broader agenda. This framing subtlety undermines the Ukrainian and Western positions that the conflict is an unprovoked act of aggression that must be the sole focus of any such high-level engagement. Russian state media has amplified this narrative, portraying the summit as a personal victory for their president and highlighting the concerns in Kyiv as evidence of their successful diplomacy. Within the Trump's administration, there appears to be a unified front in support of the president's strategy. Key cabinet members, from Secretary of Defense Peter Hegseth, who is monitoring the intense fighting on the ground, to Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent, who oversees the complex sanctions regime, are aligned with the diplomatic track being pursued. The administration's view is that conventional diplomacy has failed to stop the bloodshed and that a new, more direct approach is warranted. Vice President J.D. Vance has articulated this position, suggesting that a negotiated settlement, while likely to make both sides unhappy, is the only realistic path to stopping the killing and that such a negotiation is impossible absent the leadership of Donald J. Trump. His perspective underscores a belief that the force of the president's personality and his deal-making acumen can succeed where more traditional diplomatic efforts have stalled. The reaction from European allies has been a mixture of cautious support and thinly veiled apprehension. While publicly welcoming President Trump's initiative, they have worked tirelessly behind the scene to establish clear red lines to guide the talks. The joint statement issued after the virtual summit was a clear signal to the White House that European support is contingent on a process that respects Ukraine's sovereignty and involves Kyiv in all critical decisions. The German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has been particularly clear, stating that legal recognition of Russian occupation is not up for debate and that sanctions must be strengthened if Russia does not agree to a ceasefire. The unified European position is a critical element in the diplomatic equation, providing a crucial check on any potential impulse in Washington to seek a peace deal at any cost. European leaders understand that the security of Ukraine is inextricably linked to the security of the entire continent. As the world waits the outcome of the meeting in Anchorage, the stakes could not be higher. President Trump has invested significant personal and political capital in his ability to end the war. He has warned of very severe consequences should the Russian leader refuse to engage constructively, though he has not specified what those consequences would entail. The exclusion of President Zelenskyy and Secretary General Rutte from this initial meeting places an enormous weight of responsibility on President Trump's shoulder. He will be walking a diplomatic tightrope, attempting to coax a willing negotiating partner out of a leader who has thus far shown little inclination for compromise, all while reassuring his allies that he will not betray their trust or sacrifice the principle of international law. The success or failure of this gambit will not be measured by a single meeting, The true test will be what happens in the days and weeks that follows, whether a genuine ceasefire takes hold, and whether a path opens for a broader, more inclusive negotiation that can bring a just and lasting peace to Ukraine. The decision for Trump to go it alone with his Russian counterpart is a bold one, and the world watched to see if it will be a masterstroke of diplomacy or perilous miscalculation. Many of my listeners, like 70%, haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, and so many of you don't even know that you haven't subscribed, and that is actually what makes the show going. It's almost like you're making a donation to the show. So that's why I ask again and again, because it enables us to grow and grow and grow. And we're going for the long haul here. And listen, if this is your first time listening to World Global Conflict, you don't have to subscribe. You guys, your first ones on me. But if you have watched this show before, it's like you are freeloaded now. So all I would ask you is, if you have seen this show before and you like it, help me, help my team here. Hit that subscribe and like button now, and we will continue to build this show for you. That I swear. Thank you to all of you guys who have subscribed. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much. That's all for me for today. I will see you soon. Bye for now.